CR2032. The name alone is enough to fill the hearts of the old Sega faithful with bittersweet. It was the mid to late 90s, and CD-based consoles were becoming the new standard. Unfortunately for all of us, the industry was still about a decade away from consoles with internal storage becoming standard. Well, except both the Sega CD and Sega Saturn had built-in storage, but come on, whoever played a Saturn, am I right? I'm so alone. So if you actually wanted to save your progress in Metal Gear Solid, instead of starting the whole thing over every time you turned on your PlayStation, you would need to shell out another $20 on a memory card. This is a little rectangular brick that you'd plug into your console, and so long as it did its job, you'd never really have to think about it again. Until it inevitably ran out of space and you had to run back to Kmart and lose another $20, and come on, when's 2005 gonna get here? I'm so sick of these things! But there was one memory card that would stand out above the others. The Dreamcast Visual Memory Unit did so much more than just save your games. It actually was a teeny tiny game system unto itself. And you know, certain other, less ambitious, objectively less good console makers might have stopped there. Come on guys, you can play minigames, isn't that good enough? Not at all, said Sega, as they built a video game controller with a window. Pop the VMU in, and now whether you're bombing downhill in Crazy Taxi, having an existential experience with Rez, or doing whatever the crap this is supposed to be, you now have a second screen built into the controller. A second screen consisting of a monochrome 48x32 pixel grid, but a screen all the same. Okay, yeah, most developers would just use it to like throw a logo or a little looping animation on there. However, a few games would do some innovative things with that extra screen that, looking back, seem pretty prescient. Kovar told me you wouldn't know that word. But then, he thinks Metroid Fusion is a bad game. I, on the other hand, believe in Metroid Fusion. Just like I believe in you. Sometimes it'd be something as simple as offloading extra info onto the VMU screen. Like, Ready to Rumble would track your hit percentage, Resident Evil kept track of your health, and D2 gave you a compass. But it really shined in multiplayer games, where the VMU gave every player a screen of their own. So Sonic Shuffle would hide your cards on the television, letting you keep your hand to yourself. The NFL 2K series even let you pick your plays on the VMU, so your buddies wouldn't be able to offside counter your blitz from the line of scrimmage. Yeah, I know how football works, but probably my favorite attempt at the VMU's second screen potential came from what was an incredibly mediocre arcade conversion. The arcade version of this game was, well, it was exactly what it says on the tin. The cabinet was mounted with a rifle, with a scope that you could actually look through to line up shots. It was attention-grabbing and immersive in a way that, sadly, the home conversions were never going to be able to match. I mean, Silent Scope was so dependent on its scope gimmick that it seemed like a fool's errand to even try. But god darn if they didn't try. Play Silent Scope on the Dreamcast, and the VMU can serve as your scope, constantly updating in real time to match whatever you're looking at. It doesn't really work! The VMU is just way too lacking in fidelity to display graphics this complicated. But still, it's an admirable effort. It's the most ridiculous, extraneous, impractical, and wonderfully niche thing I've ever seen a game do with the VMU. And really, this thing was scratching the surface of asymmetric gameplay 3 generations before the Wii U. And unlike the Wii U, the VMU could actually function independently of its console. This meant that even when you weren't at home playing your Dreamcast, you could take a piece of the game with you. Of course, everybody knows about Chao. What you might not know is that some Marvel vs. Capcom 2 arcade cabinets actually had their own VMU slot. You could keep track of your playtime and win-loss record, take your custom characters with you, and even transfer character unlocks from one version to the other. So if you had unlocked Akuma on your Dreamcast, you could unlock him for everyone at the arcade, or vice versa. Shenmue also had a VMU app. So every once in a while when you bought a drink in Shenmue, you would get
a winning can.
You could take that to the Tomato Mart in-game and exchange it for a free prize drawing, or you could put in your Shenmue passport disc, connect your Dreamcast to the information superhighway, and trade your
winning can
in online in exchange for itty-bitty animations. of seemingly every single person, place, thing, or idea in the game, and some that aren't in the game. There are something like 400 of these, and you're rewarded one for every winning can you get. Yeah, as far as I know, a save file containing a full set has never surfaced. I'll get to more games in a bit, but speaking of animations, that's another thing that's like borderline forgotten about the Dreamcast now. SEGA released tools that would allow anyone to make their own VMU animations, and hosted a portal for them through Planet Web. I remember scouring these lists, picking videos that piqued my interest, waiting patiently for it to download, pulling the VMU out of the controller, and triumphantly watching... Wow. Yep. And you know what the best part is? Sonic4901 at worldnet.att.net was me. Half a decade before YouTube was even conceived, this was how I produced and viewed online videos. I'd have just turned 12 when I made these, but hey, I'm just glad I still have them. And seeing as the Dreamcast web browser supported VMU downloads with no boundaries whatsoever, this was one of the only gaming devices in history to enjoy a more or less officially sanctioned homebrew community during its active lifetime. This gave us Chao editors, Tetris, Metal Gear, just a never-ending cavalcade of content. With a few standout exceptions, they weren't often very good, but who cares? They were interesting, they were free, and the sheer novelty of downloading a game directly onto a separate device made them seem almost ethereal. And now for something that I don't think has ever been attempted. A quickfire critique of every single Dreamcast VMU game I could find. But first, a few caveats. This list won't include any homebrew, because we'd be here all day, and it won't include non-English releases because most of them are pretty incomprehensible if you don't speak Japanese. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to play this. So I'm only including things that actually sort of qualify as games, so no clocks or collections or Seaman food storage units. With that in mind, here we go. My ranking of every single VMU minigame. All 15 of them. This is Trick Style. It basically is what everyone hoped the 21st century would look like in 1999. Hoverboards, techno music, and Power Rangers. I can't wait to see how the genius developers at Acclaim captured all of these elements for the VMU minigame. I mean, it's freaking called Trick Style Jr., so it should be some cool, albeit scaled down take on the main game, right? No, it's just snaky. This is something that's going to become quite a common theme with these VMU games. There were maybe a handful of genres that it was kind of well-suited for, but with virtually zero exceptions, it was incapable of providing anything close to what a portable version of a Dreamcast title might look like. So most developers, quite fairly, chose to focus on what it could do, and this led to some degree of repetition. For instance, virtual pets. The VMU has a lot of virtual pets. Unfortunately, Zombies Revenge runs way too fast, so I'm gonna have to resort to off-camera footage for this one. So yeah, this is one of a couple of Tamagotchi-type games, and in my opinion, it's the worst of the bunch. You've got three options. Meal, in my case, has nothing in it, because you've got to collect food in the real game to have anything. I did play for about half an hour, found only 2 tomatoes in that time, but of course I didn't have this particular VMU in, so yeah, I got nothing. Para is just a poorly translated word for what probably should have been stat. And finally, game leads to 2 options. I have no idea why you'd want to fish for zombies, but here it is. Ugh. Even at level 1, it's just finicky. You're mashing whatever buttons it tells you for way too long. And then you've also got Zombie Doubt, where your character shows you cards, and you have to pick which symbol they didn't show you. Thrilling. So the game itself is bad, but hey, plus 1 point for being able to transfer your leveled up character back into the main game's fighting mode. Minus 2 points because this is the definition of a tacked on feature, and you cannot use your beefed up VMU characters in the real game. And then minus several million because according to the manual, you'll have to take care of your VMU character for an entire week in real time just to level them up enough to unlock the privilege. Yeah, that'd be worth it. This is Evil Twin. One of the Dreamcast's most obscure games was also one of its most avant-garde. It's weird and floaty and pretty rough around the edges, but the art direction and imagination that went into Evil Twin is commendable. During development, the team intended to include not 1, but 4 different VMU minigames, which were unceremoniously scrapped shortly before release. But the VMU is an open platform, and the developer released them all online a few years later. Yeah, this skirts the line a bit on what counts as an official VMU game, but I think it's close enough. The worst of these 4 games is Glucky Labby. The smooth animation of the 3D corridor is impressive, but something like this is just way too far outside the VMU's capabilities. I found a map on the first level, and that was nice, but it only applied to that first floor. As the stages become more complicated, you're just running around a featureless void of a maze, trying to stumble upon the exit. I played it for 5 minutes, and that was more than enough. Here's another game from Evil Twin, Fat Rain. And this is fine considering it was scrapped, but it definitely seems kind of unfinished. You're supposed to catch all the food this big guy, vomits out, and attack him with the ball. I don't know, it just seems too complicated for its own good. This might just be the emulator throwing off the timing, but it frequently seems completely impossible to dash over fast enough to actually catch the food. When I made the Sonic Adventure 2 episode last year, I remembered that I never cared much about Chao in SA2 the way I did in SA1, but I didn't remember why. Oh yeah, this was why. Chao Adventure 2 was way too tedious. The original Chao Adventure worked well because it was like a Tamagotchi. It wasn't demanding of your time, it just gave you a tiny little task to complete every once in a while. Chao Adventure 2, on the other hand, constantly expects you to read poorly translated, utterly confounding, scrolling text on a blurry 1-inch screen, and that's no good. Here we've got Tech Romancer Mini. Does this make any sense at all to you? Like, can you tell what you're supposed to do? What the heck is going on here? Let's see. Rules. Kiss Junpei. Punch the girls. Oh yeah, that clears it up. This is something pretty common among VMU apps. 3 minigames in one, and... dock well? I mean, yeah, that's my daily affirmation. One's all about kissing Junpei and beating up women, one's about docking well, and the last is just rock, paper, scissors. This game is very obviously derivative of another Capcom title we'll see later on this list, and while both are very well coded, I'd say this is the messier of the two. The Dreamcast rendition of the Namco Museum included a downloadable minigame, Pack-It. You control Pac-Man on the left, and have to collect dots that come out of that pixelated spooter thing. It starts off slow and kind of dull, but the speed and difficulty ratchet up over time, and it can surprisingly get pretty frenzied. Of course, the VMU's blurry screen becomes an issue when it gets too fast. Plus, it was completely outdone by a homebrew developer who just outright ported Pac-Man to the VMU. But still, this is fun, simple, arcadey action, and a worthy bonus for Namco Museum. VMU Football is a bit unconventional. It's the only thing on this list that wasn't tied to an actual Dreamcast title. Instead, this was developed in-house at SEGA of America and made available on SEGA.com. You run the football down the field in first person and have to weave around the defensive line. Well, I say weave, it's more like you graft yourself into one of 3 lanes, and struggle against the VMU's puny little CPU, which can't possibly hope to match your response time. But while it is undoubtedly clunky, there is something kind of fun about watching these lines of pixels slowly expand into football players. The game's even got punts, field goals, and touchdowns. Probably too ambitious for its own good, but as a free showcase for the VMU, I think it earns its place. SEGA GT is a realistic simulation racer, so it only makes sense that its VMU minigame is, of course, another virtual pet. Except in this case, the virtual pet in question is a race car driver. It turns out to be a lot more involved than something like Chao Adventure. You have 30 days to get him ship-shape for the big race, and you can choose to do one activity every day. I don't know how stomach crunches or jumping rope are supposed to make your car go faster, but you know, games don't always have to make sense. Aw, what's wrong, little buddy? Has life got you down? Just do what I do and stay in bed for a week straight. That'll put the pet back in your step. Alright, we've got less than a week to go, and... the heck? He got injured! And he had to spend 3 days in the hospital. This game is ridiculous. It's probably held back by the fact that the actual, racing part of it is so slow and clunky, but I guess that's the VMU for you. And hey, not only can you transfer the funds you win on the VMU back to the main game, but according to the manual, winning all 6 circuits on the VMU will let you unlock an exclusive vehicle in the main game. I've never really been a fan of simulation racers, but if that's your cup of tea, then Pocket GT is a great value add. Paper Attack is the most action-packed of the Evil Twin foursome. You play as a heroic paper airplane, and I guess you're shooting down crumpled up paper trying to knock you out of the sky. This one sets itself apart by having a bit of a defined theme. and that's not always a good thing. The more detailed graphics mean you don't have much time to react. It's not easy, but it's not bad. The final Evil Twin game, Swampy excels where all the rest faltered. This is a game on the VMU, so it has to be simple. And just looking at it for this long, I bet you've already figured out how to play it. It does get a lot more challenging than this though. The site I got it from claimed it was impossible to even get past level 5 or 6. But I made it all the way to level 13 before I ran out of lives. And yeah, a game like this really doesn't need lives. But still, it's a great little brain teaser, easy to learn, difficult to master. The Chao Adventure minigame from Sonic Adventure is the most famous example of VMU functionality, and for good reason. It's an entire virtual pet system built around the relationship between the Dreamcast and its VMU. Tamagotchis and Gigapets and the like were all the rage when the Dreamcast was in development, and Sonic Team not only capitalized on that craze, they took the concept further than this thing ever could. What really brings this first rendition together is how well the minigame itself is designed. The VMU wasn't capable of extended play sessions, and so Chao Adventure is something that you can play passively. It doesn't demand a big block of time or attention, but it'll keep throwing a variety of little surprises and challenges at you. And it was worth what little effort it demanded, as a lot of the items and functionality of the Chao system were exclusive to the VMU. Naming a Chao, seeing specific stats, winning unique fruits. Sonic Team made sure the VMU was worth having in this game. Like I said earlier, Adventure 2's VMU game doesn't hold a candle to this one, and while the GBA functionality was a cool stand-in on the GameCube ports, this is still my favorite way to take Chao on the go. You might be surprised to learn that Soul Calibur had a pair of VMU games, and that'd be because these were not actually available on the game disc. To celebrate the game becoming a worldwide million seller, Namco made these available for download on their website. And I might be breaking my own rules here, but I think they were exclusively in Japan. One of these is that aforementioned text adventure that I can't play, and the other is another collection of 3-in-1 minigames. Unfortunately, this absolutely chugs on the VMU emulator, so I'm gonna have to resort to off-camera footage again. Alright, let's get her started up here, and... What the? In almost 20 years of owning these things, the only sound that's ever come out of them are boops and beeps, and here's Namco, Namco. Just, how'd they do that? God, no wonder the emulator was chugging so hard. Like I said, this is another 3-in-1 minigame collection. Cannon Dare is the weakest of the bunch, as it's entirely luck-based. You just choose which of these wicks will or will not lead to the cannon. Word Scramble is a surprisingly well-done little brain teaser that has you sorting various Soul Calibur-related words, with bonus points if you spell them backwards. But the highlight here is Valdo Panic, where you play as a mantis-crawling Valdo, bouncing treasures off your belly to safety. Yeah, your player is made up of like 10 pixels, but what you lose in detail, you gain in playability. It reminds me of a more fluid, more fun version of the Game & Watch game Fire. It's a good time. According to legend, completing all 3 games unlocks an exclusive costume for Valdo in the main game. Of course, I have no idea how to get this to actually happen, or if it even works with the US version, and the internet seems uncharacteristically barren of info as well. So if you have any idea, let me know. Capcom's seminal 3D fighting game Power Stone came with the definitive take of the 3-in-1 minigame concept. Gunrock Slots is the most basic of the 3, but it's a slot machine complete with wagers and a double or nothing system. Ayame's shuriken training is more action-packed, although the VMU's dinky little D-pad isn't really up to full targeting control. I think a quick-fire aiming system like this one, or if you're rated E for everyone, this one, would have worked better. Finally, Falcon's aerial adventure is the best of the 3, as you pilot a plane with the simple goal of getting as far as you can. One thing that's really cool about Power Stone Mini is the way each game incorporates the main gimmick of the title it's based on. Collecting 3 of the titular Power Stones lets your fighter take on a ridiculously overpowered form, and the same thing applies here. You'll earn medals in each title depending on how well you do, which can be transferred back into the main Power Stone game to unlock even more bonus content. In terms of detail, finesse, and fun factor, Power Stone Mini is probably the best playing game on the device, but that only counts for so much. Like I've said, the VMU wasn't really built for intricate long-term experiences. The hardware and form factor just aren't up to that. So to me, the greatest VMU games are the ones that interface the best with the Dreamcast title they're based on. Power Stone Mini or Soul Calibur are probably the better actual games on the VMU, but all you really get from playing them are bonuses. Sonic Adventure's Chao Garden is a fun, detailed system that incentivizes replayability, but everything about it is walled off from the rest of the game. I say this not to disparage those titles, but rather to contrast this next one and provide context for why I'm ranking it at number 1. I don't necessarily expect them to be great games in their own right, I expect them to be rewarding diversions. And there's no diversion on the system more rewarding than Pinta's Quest. What you do in Pinta's Quest isn't really anything special. It's another passive game, where an airship automatically explores any area of the map that you choose. Pinta will get himself into a few different types of random encounters, and a combination of how well you play and which area you're in will earn you different types of items. What makes it special then is how comprehensively it interfaces with the game it hails from. Skies of Arcadia is one of those definitive Dreamcast titles, an incredibly ambitious role-playing game that was practically born into obscurity, forever beloved by those few who remember it. Several hours into the game, you meet a boy named Pinta, who offers to help your crew by collecting rare items. From then on, you can dispatch him onto the VMU from the menu. Pinta can only explore the regions of the map that you've actually opened up in the main game. At any point, you can recall him from the VMU, and any items or gold he has on hand are transferred to your party. This can include some incredibly useful stuff, and even a few items that are exclusive to this mode. This means that when you're not playing Skies of Arcadia, you can take a piece of the game with you and be rewarded for it with things that'll actually help you in-game. So yeah, I love Pinta's Quest. I love how cohesively it fits within the game's universe, how cleanly and thoughtfully designed it is, and how worthwhile it is to play. It is, in my opinion, the best example of just how much of a valuable addition the VMU could be. Though it was inevitably held back by the limitations of the time, the VMU was nothing less than a peek at the future. It gave us dual-screen gaming years before the DS. It was MGS5's smartphone functionality in the late 90s. It was YouTube before YouTube. It was independent games before indies. Oh, this little device was so far ahead of its time! Okay, not even I'm enough of a Sega fanboy to overstate this one. Like a lot of Sega's ideas, the VMU's downfall was that it was probably a little too far ahead of its time. This was still a memory card first and foremost, meaning owning one would be a necessity, meaning it needed to be cheap enough to maintain parity with other memory cards. This put an extremely hard limit on how expensive its components could be, and tech this cheap in the late 90s simply couldn't do anything too flashy. The VMU was always going to be held back by those limitations, but what really kept it from realizing its potential even more than that was this little thing right here. Within 5 years, a rechargeable battery in something like this would have been standard, but it wasn't yet in 1998, and so the VMU siphoned watch batteries like nobody's business. A big reason for this is that if the batteries are dead, the VMU will draw power from the controller. That's why you hear that beeping sound when you turn on the Dreamcast. It's the sound of the system's power bringing the dead VMUs back to life. But for some reason, a VMU will only use the system's power if it can't draw from the battery. Meaning that as long as you're playing a game with a not dead VMU in the controller, you're just wasting the battery. I can forgive it for not having rechargeable batteries, cause hardly anything did back then, but even in 1998, there was just no excuse for this. From the day I got my Dreamcast till now, my platoon of VMUs have positively massacred a small civilization's worth of CR 2032s. At least they did when I actually bothered to replace them. These are watch batteries after all, priced with the expectation that people won't be buying them very often. Now thankfully the VMU does still work as a memory card, it still saves your games even if the batteries are dead. But because the batteries were so expensive and ran out so quickly, most people would just never replace them, resulting in a lot of developers that, quite fairly, decided that dedicating resources to VMU functionality was a waste of effort, which in turn meant that there was even less incentive for players to bother replacing them. Yeah, it was a vicious cycle. Out of 248 retail Dreamcast releases in North America, I could only find 18 of them with any kind of VMU app. Gaming's most fascinating failures tend to be failures because of stuff like this. It's too innovative, it's too impractical, the tech just isn't there, or the install base is too small, so developers don't bother, which ensures that it stays too small. Which sucks for me because I love this stuff. I mean, maybe that's the Sega kid in me, but I've always been enthralled by innovative, boundary-pushing tech that turns out to be just a little too niche to succeed. I'm enthralled to the point that I'll play a JRPG for hours just so I can see what it'll do with the memory card. And yet, just like the Dreamcast, the VMU lives on through its fans. People are still developing homebrew games and applications. Someone even got a rendition of Pokemon Go running on it. The developers behind an upcoming Dreamcast game called Elysian Shadows wanted VMU functionality to be integral to the game, even if you were playing the PC version. So they created the VMU emulator that I've been using for this episode. And if you want to upgrade the physical hardware, DreamMods.net sells modernized VMUs with a rechargeable battery and a backlight, yours for only $85. Ugh. Okay, even I don't love the VMU that much. But hey, I'm glad that fans who are this hardcore are still out there, refusing to let the flame die, making sure that even after 20 years, the Dreamcast lives on. And I'm eternally thankful for all of you for being hardcore fans of what I do and backing the channel. And since this is a bonus episode and I don't have to worry about silly things like viewer retention or having an end card, let's say I read out everyone's name for a change. This will be everybody at the bonus episode tier or above as of this recording, and apologies in advance if I pronounced your name wrong. Here we go! Thank you to Linio, Matthew Fintonis, Joseph Tamburino, Jay Support, Sol Hareth, Asher Vindraman, Kenny Green, Hope Evangelion, Dread Lily Tenebre, Timothy Britton, Finn Rowe, Blaze Camacho, Green Chill Zone, Cameron Regal, Awesome Jacket Dude, Hatsworth, Richard Franzen, Peter Pike, Derpfish Rejects, Chris Stewart, The SideQuest Gamer, Alex Nelson, Brigus, Big High War Chicken, Johan Pirabauer, Flegramma, Andrew Gilly, Joshua T. Wintham, Alex Johnson, Owen Muffley, Salim Al-Arak, Nick Lang, Ali Solial, Pat Delaney, Jaeger Tiedman, Hammerhead027, Joseph Martin, Chris Davis, Jonathan Levy, Main Memory, John Frary, Matthew Lobb, Stephen Tigner, The Man with Sauce, Stephen Kaltenbach, and Brian Wood. I literally could not do this thing without you. I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode, and until next time, you keep geeking, I'll keep... Wait, what the... It looks like I missed a game. Alright, let's do one more. Time Stalkers is an RPG so utterly overshadowed by another, better game on the same platform that even someone as crazy about the Dreamcast as I am had never heard anything about it. It was only a footnote in a Wikipedia article that led me here. In Time Stalkers, you play as a spiky-haired hero of destiny whose name is literally Sword, and traverse floor after floor after floor after floor after floor of randomly generated, visually identical dungeons, looking for stuff to make your numbers get higher. You do this so that you can fight monsters, by which I mean you select moves in menus and watch the same little scenes play out over and over and over and over again with no actual direct input from the player, and once you've done that a few hundred times, you get to watch uninspired dialogue play out in unskippable cutscenes. This is an encapsulation of everything that I personally don't want in a video game. It's a strategy-based RPG dungeon crawler, a roguelike, and an absolutely uninspired, janky, poorly regarded, and deservedly forgotten rendition of one at that. And so, of course, Time Stalkers contains what looks like it might be some of the most robust, ambitious VMU support on the entire platform. It's got a 3D dungeon crawler, a rock-paper-scissors game that's multiplayer with another VMU, a game where you transfer monsters you capture on the Dreamcast into the VMU and put them to work for you, and even a pixel editor that lets you import your own drawings back into the main game and use them as decoration. This all sounds awesome! But there's a reason I said this looks like the most ambitious game on the system. I can't say for sure, because I can't freaking play any of them! I have endured Time Stalkers for 2 hours now, and it felt like being in purgatory, but I saw neither hide nor hair of any VMU support. What in the world is the manual talking about? Let me see if I can find anything online. Oh, it turns out the VMU games are super rare consumable items that randomly appear for sale at certain shops that only appear once you're deep into the story, and the minigames are single use. Once you use the item to transfer the game to your VMU, that's it. You have to luck into finding it again. This Dreamcast excursion has taken long enough as it is, so I'm gonna exclude Time Stalkers for being just Just way too much. Way too much of that. Even I've got to draw the line somewhere. But until that day comes, I'll keep critiquing.